Hey there, welcome to the Foodie Finesse, the channel where we learn how to make pescatarian, plant-based, and vegan-friendly recipes with all the flair. And on today, we are making this simplistic pan-seared salmon, but we're going to take it to the next level and add this delicious honey butter glaze on the top of it. I mean, look at it, y'all. It is literally glistening, and I cannot wait to dip my fork in it. And if you are just like me, stay tuned. So we're going to be starting off with our salmon fillets that have been cleaned and pat dry on both sides. Now, it is very important that you do pat the salmon dry on both sides because we're going to be pan searing it, and we want to make sure to give it a nice crisp instead of it steaming when we put it in the pan. So what you see me doing now is actually adding just a bit of grapeseed oil to the fish because this is going to act as a marinade once we add our seasonings to it. Now, as you guys can see, I went ahead and added my seasonings to the fish, and what I'm doing now is I'm just simply using a brush to blend together that oil and the seasonings on each piece of fish. Now, if you do not have a brush, that is perfectly fine. You can just get all in there and use your hands, but whichever one works, right? Just make sure that it's all blended well together. Now, as far as my seasonings, I am just simply using some Old Bay, some garlic powder, some onion powder, pink Himalayan sea salt, and black pepper. But that is the joy of cooking because you guys can actually use whichever seasoning blend happens to be your favorite because we all have different flavor palettes, right? But whichever one you decide to use, make sure that it's all blended and incorporated well with that oil and set it aside in the fridge until we are ready for it. So for the next step, we're actually going to be moving on to our oven roasted potatoes. And as you guys can see here, I'm using some cleaned red potatoes because those happen to be my favorite. And what I'm showing you right now is actually the step that I do in order to cut my potatoes. Now, this step is important because you want to make sure that the potatoes are cut evenly and consistently so that they will cook evenly and consistently when you put them in the oven. Now, I just cut them in half and then cut them again into fours, and this is what they end up looking like. So not only is this great for presentation, but it's great for an even layer of cooking for your potatoes. So after you get all of your potatoes cut up and in the bowl, they will look a little something like this. And then we're going to grab that grapeseed oil again, and then we're going to pour that all over the potatoes. Now, I personally like to use grapeseed oil when I'm cooking because it is actually one of the safer and more healthier oils to cook with when you're using heat for your food. So as you can see, I've already added all of my seasonings to the bowl. And this is just simply a blend of minced garlic, some fresh minced garlic that is, and then some Italian seasoning blend, some garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, pink Himalayan sea salt, and black pepper. Now, this happens to be my not perfect, but my favorite blend of seasonings when it comes to these oven roasted potatoes. And it's just one of those things where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But you guys can actually use whichever seasoning blend happens to be your favorite because that, like I said before, is the joy of cooking. So as you guys can see, I just went ahead and blended that seasoning and the oil together using a spoon. But as you can see, I decided that I wanted to add another layer because that first layer just wasn't popping and hitting enough for me. So I wanted to add a bit more seasoning to it. And as you can see, the color got a lot more richer and the flavor became a lot more dense from this. Now, this is important with potatoes because they can be very bland if you don't season them well. So once they're all seasoned well, you want to add them to a foiled baking sheet because you don't want to mess up your pans as the potatoes are crisping up in the oven. And you want to spread them out well so they have room to breathe and crisp up while they're in the oven. And they will look a little something like this once you get them spread out. Now, you're going to add them to an oven that's been preheated at 400 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes, flipping them in between. And while those potatoes are in the oven, we're going to move on to the next step, and that is pan searing our salmon. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually using my favorite nonstick pan, and I'm going to coat the pan very well using some butter. And yes, this is plant-based butter because this is a plant-based channel, right? But you guys can actually use whichever butter happens to be your favorite. So what you see me doing now is actually adding the salmon to the pan that has actually been preheated at about medium to medium-high heat. And I'm adding the salmon to the pan skin side down. Now, this step is very important because once you add the salmon to the pan skin side down, you don't want to flip it, you don't want to touch it or move it for about 4 to 5 minutes or until it starts to look a little something like what you see on the screen. As you can see, it starts to get a little white and you can see it cooking on the sides. And that's when I decided to cook it, which is at about 4 to 5 minutes. But whatever time frame that looks like for you, make sure that you flip it. You don't touch it or you don't flip it until it looks like this. So once you flip it, you can can see that that skin is nice and brown and crispy. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video when I said it was very important that we make sure that our salmon is dry on both sides, so that is skin side and flesh side. So once you flip your salmon to the flesh side, you don't want to leave it on this side for too long. I'd say for about literally 2 to 3 minutes, because you don't want it to burn. You have to remember that those seasonings are on there. You don't want it to blacken too much, because as you can see, as I'm flipping it over, it has that nice golden brown tint to it. And if you leave it on the flesh side down for too long, it will burn or will scorch. So you don't want that. So as you can see, it's all nice and it's glistening and it's crispy. So this is the consistency and the texture that you want, and you can leave it in this pan for about another 4 to 5 minutes. So after that salmon is all cooked up, we're going to move on to the next step of that delicious honey butter glaze that's going to go over the top of this entire dish. So in this pan, you see about a tablespoon of butter, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, a tablespoon of honey, and also some minced garlic. And I'm also adding the juice of a half of a lemon to this blend. And what you see me doing now is just actually blending or incorporating all of those ingredients together over some medium heat until it's nice and blended well. Now this step is actually going to take this simplistic weekday meal to the next level. Like, this is like restaurant quality now when you're making this sauce, and it's so simple, but it is so necessary because it's going to literally make this dish next level, like I said. So now it's time for plating, and we're going to take our potatoes out of the oven, and they will look like this once they're done. And in order to ensure that your potatoes are done, you can actually take a fork or a toothpick or something and stick it in like I'm doing now, and you can see that it goes in with ease. So as you can see, the potatoes are done, and I actually decided to do some steamed broccoli as well. I didn't show that on camera because I figured it was pretty simple, and you can actually use whichever vegetable you decide to use. But this is what it looks like, y'all. Look at this salmon. Like, that skin is nice and crispy. That top layer is glistening and brown and blackened. Like, it literally looks like restaurant quality, right? And bam, here we go for the next step that is going to take it to the next level, and that is that honey butter glaze that we just made. And literally, it tastes good on every element of the dish. So I decided to just kind of use all of the sauce that I made, and I put it over the broccoli, I put it over the fish, I put it over the potatoes too. Like, it's that good. So once you add that sauce to the dish, look at it, y'all. Like, literally, this is chef quality. It is so delicious. I highly recommend you trying this meal because it's good for meal prep and it's good for a quick meal throughout the week. Thank you for watching. Later.